Let's talk about death from your news reporter from inside the void. Now, it's weird to say that I am in the void. Is the void? I'm somewhere. I think I spent a lot of time in the void. I know it quite well. I know what its walls are made up of. I'm just gonna read it to you. Let's get right into it. Let's get right into the news. This just in, local Void reporter has a brief existential crisis after peeping a song title on the car radio. Now, hands up if this has happened to you, where you saw something, a bulletin board, a sign, heard a song, a license plate number, and suddenly the spiraling happened. And while one can argue this is a terrible thing, I would argue it's a blessing because you don't have ideas. Ideas have you. With that said, I have been thinking a lot about death. I know, Joe, you always do. But this time it's in a more metaphorical sense. What do I mean by this? Falling on Deaf Ears by How the Sun is playing while I'm reading an unread text message about something that could spark genuine conversations from the right people. But I've been surrounded by death recently. On the plus side, no one dear to me has passed. Not in a within close proximity sense. So that is a blessing. I have yet to lose people, and people have yet to lose me. But it started with an offerenda. I don't know anybody on it. Amongst my cousin and his girlfriend, their family members are on there. They left one weekend, so I had time to myself, and I was like, "Fuck it, let's clean the mess of grown folks because they're not gonna do it." And while I was cleaning off the bookshelf, I found their photos of their family members, kind of just stacked under a bunch of shit, all on top of each other. One of them was face down, and I believe there was always an intention to put them back up. I understand the process of grieving. Maybe it was hard. Or maybe moving houses kind of made them a little lazier. Maybe they didn't see it as all that important. And I started thinking, Lord fucking forbid that my portrait is stacked under a bunch of bullshit in somebody's bookshelf that I have a lot of love for. And that made me sad. So I reset the offerenda, put a little white candle in front of it, took a rose from the vase, and laid it down, tried to make it nice. The next day, I walked out to the backyard to water my garden, and a neighborhood blue jay had probably been mauled to death by one of the dogs. Let's be real. And that one was sad because I think the weekend before, me and the kids had actually decided to name the birds. They got really close to us, strangely close to us, and observed us while we observed them. And they named them. I don't remember the names. So I buried it underneath the pomegranate tree, and the flowers in my garden had just bloomed. So I picked a couple, laid them down on a brick that I laid on top of the grave. And the second blue jay, because it was two, watched me the whole time. And then I kind of cried about that. I cried about the fact that this blue jay didn't have a friend no more. And that made me really sad. And I've only been to one funeral when I was young. And I was very disassociated. That's fair. I think I was like maybe 6 when it happened. Didn't really understand what was happening. And I didn't cry. I didn't do the viewing part either. I couldn't. I refused. And sometime after, my uncle was when they put him down to the ground, 2 really fantastic events. 3 really happened. One, I saw his baby mama, big old pregnant belly, and I couldn't stop staring at her, crying. And I couldn't stop staring at her belly. And then I saw this future where my uncle wouldn't be around for the baby. And she didn't have him no more. And I cried. The same way I cried when I realized the blue jay didn't have his friend either. And I wasn't crying from the sake of my own grief. I suppose somewhere deep down in there I was, but I just had this overwhelming sadness. And we turn around, and all of these dragonflies just flew all around him. Sort of like a final goodbye, or a don't worry, I'm still here. It was beautiful. And since then, I have associated dragonflies to him. We share the same birthday, which I always thought was really cool. So I always make sure sometime when I have that moment of a little bit more calm, because birthdays are naturally and inherently chaotic things, and for me they're a little bit on the more emotional side. I'm a birthday blues girly. I always make sure to say happy birthday. So this is when I started thinking about that. Then the day after the blue jays died, the blue jay, I had this red spider. I had this red spider in my bathroom that I found at the bottom of my shower when I went to go shower. Had died. And then the next day, that spider's partner died. So both of my spiders were dead. And I go into work, and my coworker, we'll call her Sin, she was telling me about how a dove's egg had fallen from the nest, and all day she had been staring at the splatter spot where the egg had fallen, which was a bit foreboding. And then that coworker had passed away, I believe, 2 weeks ago, from what we know, in her sleep. Don't know really why. There's a number of different factors that go into that. And most recently, my cousin's bearded dragon had passed away, which is probably the most tragic because it was unavoidable. It was avoidable, I meant. It was completely and totally and utterly avoidable. I don't want to be a picture on somebody's bookshelf forgotten about. Anyways, so naturally, death is on the dome piece, right? I'm not even gonna mention like the passive suicidal ideations that spring about every once in a while. I don't know if I'll ever not have those. And I was listening to I was driving home one night and I was listening to the song Uneasy Hearts Weigh the Most by Dance Gavin Dance. Absolute fucking banger, that one. It is. That song's just fucking great. But for the first time since I've started listening to this song, like way back in high school, I was like, Uneasy Hearts Weigh the Most. Hey, I think that that's a reference to the story about that one lady who weighs your heart against a feather. And if your heart is heavier than the feather, then you're not getting into heaven. I was like, I wonder if that's what that song title is about. And I was like, well, yeah, you know. An uneasy heart does, in fact, weigh a shit ton. But what does that really mean? And when I started thinking about like what an uneasy heart meant, what makes the heart uneasy, what gives it that weight, I recalled a story my grandmother told me about her grandfather who had passed away some years ago, within my lifetime, fairly recently, maybe in the past 5 to 7 years. Um, and since my uncle died, I believe was one of the first deaths that I had, or one of the next deaths I had encountered, but of no sentimental value. I didn't know him. But I remember she was telling this story about while he was in hospice, in that near death state, he would mumble and cry about things and say shit like, no, please don't show me that. And he was arguably a man with many regrets and many sins. I started thinking about that. If you don't get into heaven, what do you get into? Because I don't believe in hell. People always say you can't believe in God without the devil. You can't believe in heaven without hell. Well, I believe in unity. The consciousness is one, and that we're all just fragments that belong to something greater. And no matter who you are or where you came from or what you did, there is always a way back to that wholeness, that big gaping hole that just is everything. A lot of people say that when they encounter it, it's very warm. Um, but how come some people like the idea of reincarnation? Let's just be fucking blatantly obvious. I tried to find like a more subtle and eloquent way to get into it, but my mind immediately went straight to reincarnation. Like, you hear about the concepts that Earth is just like a prison planet or like a place where they study human consciousness and all this other stuff. And you know, before I started studying, or not even studying, just kind of hearing about shit like that, I used to have dreams that would say shit like that. Which is really interesting, like in retrospect, right? But I wonder if reincarnation is real, if he would come back. And if he did, because here's the thing, in the story of the lady who weighs your heart against a feather, you don't get into heaven. But does that mean you come back here? And is it a lifelong thing, like judgment, or is it in the moment you decide for yourself that I'm just gonna let it all go? I'm going home, baby. I'm going home. Because if heaven is just returning to that massive hive mind thing of one true consciousness where everything is warm and harmonious, then the ticket would be understanding in your soul, not your mind, that everything is one. And maybe understanding isn't enough. Suppose the ticket would be more like embodiment. And if you don't get it, you don't get in. And again, I don't believe in like the prison planet bullshit because I think Earth is quite nice. And humans are perfectly feathered. We are feathered perfection. If you get what I mean, you get what I mean. And then that got me thinking of cycles and how life is full of, if not just in and of itself, cycles, right? And those things, how do they begin? They begin at the end, the beginning of an end. I have another story before I get into the rest of this. I asked my mom if there was ever a time when my father had actually met me because they were together sometime during her pregnancy until he left. And she said there was one time after I was born. And they were sitting on the porch and it was a rainy day. And he held me. And she said in that moment, it felt like the beginning of an end. It was quite sad, isn't it? So where do they begin? Where a story never ends. We repeat cycles to find closure somewhere, to rewrite endings, to direct new scenes, to fill at peace eventually. And that sort of shit would indubitably make somebody's heart weigh tons. But if you carry with you your whole life, but maybe if this or if I did that and next time I'll, then you never actually allow yourself to close that cycle. You just end up hamster wheeling existence, internal debates about what's right, what's wrong, what's natural, and what feels like karma, and endless misleading of minds and heart matter. And in the end, there's always a sort of choice, right? There's a choice in that very last moment. Do I let it go? Or do I give myself another chance to try again? Neither's right, neither's wrong. Just kind of is. Do I let this go or give myself another chance to make a change? Make it right. To rewrite means to take on that burden of change, and I've written maybe thousands of poems and letters and stories, and I'm almost always satisfied with the initial draft. I got it down and I got it out, but nothing is more grueling than trying to fix something or make it perfect, or better, or coherent enough for readers, or useful enough for judges to determine it means something to them. Right now, this is my audience. Oh, cheers to that. And I'm not trying to make it perfect. I'm not even trying to make total sense or even say something meaningful enough to create some sort of change or healing enough to break a cycle. Homegirl's right in the middle of one, staring me dead in the fucking face and saying, I thought we had this. And I'm like, I thought you knew what choice I made. But where am I going with this? Mind and word vomit, something that kept me up at night because I overanalyzed the song title. And then I thought of that lyric by Linkin Park while I'm thinking and writing all this shit down. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. I'd like to think last minute I'd make the right choice. And I don't know what that would look like. Not at all. But I'd like to think I'd make the right one. Suppose right now my only question is, what is right when the mind and the heart are constantly at odds with one another? Because lately I've just been doing any, mini, miny, fucking mo with destiny. Either way, it all leads somewhere. And one side will always have an unresolved story with a list of chores that won't be finished, stories that can't be told, and feelings that can't be fixed, and people that I'll never meet. And another song comes to mind when I think about this. My life is like a video game, trying hard to beat the stage, all while I am still collecting coins. Obstacles, I'm jumping hurdles. Anyways. And the only issue with that is, except once I beat this game, there is no previous save file that I can just load back into to try out alternative endings. And I think that brings a sense of existential dread. Now, let me give you a little bit of a tidbit about myself. My first RPG game ever was Fable. What is Fable if not about alternative endings, picking sides, right or wrong, good or evil? And I played the shit out of that game, dude. I've beat the game 100%ed it at least 8 separate fucking times for each ending, good or bad. Like, I've made every possible fucking choice I could in that game before Wiki. All right? I was in that shit. It took me about 2 summers in a row, but I did it. And I still love that game. Hey, Fable 4 is coming out next year, by the way. Not excited about that. Just looks like trash. I do miss the world, though. That's just the kind of gamer I am. I'm always curious about other endings. I suppose another example would be Nier Automata or Automata, whatever you want to call it. There's a bunch of different endings for that game, and I played most of them, not all of them. I think you have to play that game at least 3 or 4 times to get like the actual ending. Anyways, but I'm always trying to figure out which side I like more. I'm always trying to figure out what the right choice is before I ever make a choice. And what ends up inevitably happening is I just sit there kind of in a state of frozen fear, unwilling and unable to make any choice at all, because I know that I have to leave something behind or I have to miss out on something, some alternative path I could have taken. And I think that's why I find myself in these cycles. The person I sent this whole monologue to, by the way, is a cycle. It's about 3 years long now. We reconnected, and his first message to me was, "Listen, I do not have any romantic feelings for you. And I am very sorry that I kept come back, even despite knowing what you wanted, and that I just don't have the energy. I just don't want to be that for you." And yeah, that's not the first time he said that. I think a part of me was like, but you actually do love me, because there's no way you keep coming back, because I don't understand men, obviously. But also, I think that I'm always constantly trying to rewrite the story and find closure and change the ending. And maybe this time, and there's 1,000 different things that go into this. Maybe it all goes back to the beginning of an end that I was only sort of a part of, like background, where my mother and my father sat on the porch while it poured rain. And the sad fucking part is, every time this man says no to me, it rains, no matter the season. In a spiritual sense, is this even my karma or lesson to be learning? If it's not, get it the fuck away from me, please. It hurts a lot. But it doesn't hurt as much as it used to. I mean, I would like hyperventilate and vomit and starve myself, and it was just so much pain. And my mom said something. She's like, "Is it worth all of that shit again, dude? Like, is it really worth all that shit? Are you gonna do it all over again?" No, no, it's gonna be different this time. Like every other time. This time, I'm not putting any emotional investment like the last 6 times I said that to myself. This isn't really about a man, though, is it? he's always been a catalyst of all of these profound questions. Um, Not the source. I've always just been a curious little gal, but every time he's around, it happens for sure. I'm incentive this time. I told him I'm just gonna keep yapping, dog. Like, one thing I never did was actually have a conversation with him because I was afraid of what he would think. And I was afraid he couldn't keep up. Most people can't. If you're listening to this, I'm assuming you can. If you've gotten almost 30 minutes in and you're still listening, you're different. You're very different. You've got an edgy mind. I don't have people like that in my life. Not a single fucking soul. Hence why I talk to a video camera. Whatever. I've been thinking a lot about death lately. And sometimes it hurts so fucking bad. I just kind of say out loud, I think I'm ready now. If there's really nothing left or for me to do here, and if this is purely about the sake of just experiencing life, oh, please, please take it. About a year ago, I got down on my hands and knees and begged the gods and my mother at their feet to take this life from me. I run my hands across your chest and up your arms and towards your neck, and you say to me, just kill me already. I smile. I lean in and I give you a gentle kiss of death. Joski out.